Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Lucas, aka 3 Point Spanish King, and as always, we seem to only have one guest that comes on here on our show all the time now, and that's all the way from England, James Butler.
Hello.
How are you, James?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Very good.
Very good. Huge a couple of announcements from England. They've announced a team head coach, and they've also announced their captain. We'll go into their captain first. It was announced that Ben Stokes would take over the captaincy. It seemed to me that England really had no other option. We discussed this last show that there could be hundreds of candidates, but it seems to me they've gone with the obvious one, James. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when we discussed it, I said that potentially Ben Stokes wouldn't be my pick because
yes,
multitude of reasons, but he was the obvious pick, as you say, and he was next in line. He'd been Joe Root's vice captain, and is obviously the only other person in that Test team who is nailed down for his position. So from that perspective, it was the obvious pick. As I did, you could make a case for players from outside of the squad. They've obviously not wanted to do that. And if you're going to stay within the squad, then Ben Stokes is the man. And, he's obviously had issues in the past. He's had mental health problems. He's had incidents as well, which have been well documented. The loss of his father and, various other things. So there were a number of reasons why I thought that Ben might not be the right move. That wasn't because I don't rate him as a cricketer. And it was not that I don't rate him as a potential captain. It's just I thought that maybe the best use of Ben Stokes might just be to maybe wrap him in cotton wool a bit more than the captaincy will provide, because he's going to be under the spotlight. He's going to be responsible for everything moving forward, basically. So I hope it goes well for him. I mean, he's a tremendous cricketer. I think he's matured massively as a human being. I've only ever spoken to him once, and that was when he was quite young. So I don't really know the current Ben Stokes as a person, but I know people that do, and they all say that he's a caring, empathetic, very good team man. He cares about his teammates, and he wants the best for them, and he's very protective of them. So that's a good trait to have as a captain, and I really wish him well.
Yeah, you mentioned level of maturity, and that we know, as you just said, his mental health issues, the problems he's had with the law. I won't get into that. But how do you think he'll handle this as a person? Because as you said before on recent podcasters with me, you said that he's quite, well, not egotistic, but he likes to bowl long spells. It's hard to take the ball out of his hands. How will he deal with those situations? Will he have the ego to tell himself to stop?
I don't think that's so much ego. It's just the competitive spirit in him.
Yeah.
And he's massively competitive. I mean, his biggest moments on the field have been when he's shown that competitive edge, when he annihilated the Australians at Headingley, which was fantastic to see. And
thank you so much for bringing that up.
Absolute pleasure, Lucas. I'll always mention it when I can. Winning the World Cup, beating the Australians in the semi-final. And various other things. Every
you want to keep going. You want to keep going, James. You want to lie down the red, but don't forget his 100 at the Wacker.
I'll Google every England win against Australia and just read them out. So he's massively competitive. He's going to need somebody in that side to be his right-hand man, to be somebody that maybe just keeps him in check when required. Having his competitive edge and having that competitive spirit is not a bad thing. That's not something you want to curb and diminish, because that's what makes him the player and the human being that he is. That drive to be as good as he can be. He trains, from by all accounts, trains harder and longer than anybody in that side. They're all positives. And his desire to run through a brick wall for his country and bowl for 2 days straight almost, that's a good thing too. That desire is a good thing, but he's going to need somebody in that team, I think, to say either come on to bowl now, because sometimes you as a captain you can be reluctant to push yourself forward. I don't think Ben Stokes is going to be that man, or you need somebody to say, Ben, maybe it's time to look at somebody else at that end and take and take the ball out of his hand. I mean, I've said in the past that Joe Root was always criticised for maybe bowling him into the ground, but I think a lot of that was because Ben Stokes wanted to bowl into the ground. He didn't want to give the ball back to Joe Root and to see somebody else come on and potentially take his wickets. You could argue that Joe Root could have been stronger in those kind of situations, and maybe you'd have a point with that. But he needs a vice captain or some senior figures in that side to be part of the leadership group and to just help him really with that, and because it will help him. Because the last thing you want to do is appoint Ben Stokes as captain, him bowl a 50-over spell from the uphill or something on day one, and be out for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, I've noticed that with Pat Cummins since Pat Cummins has been captain. He has bowled a long amount of overs, probably not necessary when he wasn't captain.
He's out injured now as well, isn't
he? Yeah, which is unfortunate. So close to a Test series against Sri Lanka. Is that a worry for you when it comes to Ben Stokes, that he could actually just bowl just too often and eventually break down, which England don't need?
Well, yeah, I think it's a legitimate worry as well. I mean, hopefully he's more than aware of that situation.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll talk about his new coach coming in a minute. Hopefully his coach will be more than aware of that situation. Hopefully some of the senior men, as I say, in that Test side will be aware of that situation too. And between them all, they can actually come to some kind of situation, some answer where Ben Stokes bowls the right amount of overs, whatever that figure is.
Yeah. And who will be the person to give Ben Stokes that little nudge? Will it be Joe Root himself? Will it be Johnny Bairstow or Stuart Broad?
I mean, all of those people you've mentioned are senior figures in that England side. They've all played differing numbers of Test matches, but they're all of an age now and all of vast experience in big matches where you'd anticipate they're going to have a voice in that dressing room and having a voice on the field. Because there is one captain in a team, and ultimately he takes the decision. But you have other captains on the field that are there to help, and other leaders on the field that are there to help. Ben Stokes has been that person for Joe Root, and somebody else now needs to be that person for him.
Discussing Ben's tactics as a captain, what do you expect to see from Ben? You see an aggressive approach, a steady approach. What do you think the England people are going to see under his captaincy?
I know you want to talk about Brendon McCullum a little bit later, but I think with that question, the answer to that question has got to bring him into it as well, because they're two very, I think, quite similar types of people. I mean, I don't know Brendon McCullum behind the scenes. I've seen a few things with him comes across as a really nice guy. Obviously he had worked wonders for New Zealand, setting them up so that Kane Williamson could take the baton and turn them into the team they are now. But, certainly that series that New Zealand played in England, I forget what year it was now, but it was when, about 2015, somewhere around there, where maybe 2016, where New Zealand played a series against England where it was up and atom cricket. No quarter given, attack. Be positive. Both sides. This was a one-day series, but both sides took the same approach really, and it was a terrific series as a result of that. And I think he tried to kind of have that same mentality in Test cricket. Let's kind of look him in the face. Let's be positive. Ben Stokes is very similar, I think, in terms of his approach to cricket. Both very competitive human beings on the pitch. I mean, Brendon McCullum's not that long since retired, is he? It's not that far away. He played his last played his last game. So, and the worry for me with that is that it's okay having that approach if you have the ammunition, and by that I mean players who are able to actually fulfil those plans. I think England at the moment in Test cricket, I mean, all 4 attacking sessions of cricket in Test matches, it's what makes the game great. You have slower sessions, you have faster sessions, you play, and you try and play to win. But it can't be. I don't think this England team at the moment can be attack, because I don't think they've quite got their heads around what Test cricket involves. And you've got to play the session. You've got to play the game in front of you. There might be situations and sessions where it's survive, and let's dig in and let's kind of be here at lunchtime still or whatever. So a completely positive approach at the expense of any kind of sanity at times would be a ridiculously reckless move, I think, in terms of English Test cricket. I'm not saying you can't be more positive than they've been, but to me, Lucas, one of the things that's been a real issue with England's batting, I think a lot of the batsmen that we talk about with England, the Crawleys, the Popes, the Lawrences, the others that have been used by England, far too numerous to mention over the last decade. A lot of the problem has been mental, how you approach an innings, how you choose your shot selection. A lot of them have been out wafting outside of off stump and snicking to slip or behind and playing the wrong shot at the wrong time. Now, maybe attack clears that mindset and makes them a little bit more positive and they know what to do. But yeah, I always thought with Josh Butler, a big advocate of him not playing Test cricket anymore. But I always thought that the problem with him at times was that he had a clouded mindset because he wasn't quite sure. Undoubtedly, I think probably the best white ball player around at the moment, Josh Butler. In Test cricket, never quite knew how to approach an innings. Never quite knew if he should just whether to stick or twist, and often got caught somewhere in the middle and didn't quite know where to go with it. And I think. I think if I was Josh Butler anyway, looking back at his 60 tests or whatever it was in the end, I would have much preferred to have gone out fighting and not died wondering and gone out in the same way that Adam Gilchrist came in sometimes when England in that era. England sometimes, as an England fan, you kind of saw Australia 123 for 5. You thought, we finally got them. This great team, if England have finally got them. And then Gilchrist 4 hours later was 150 odd not out, and everybody was back to normal. Josh Butler never played that kind of innings for England, where I think he was probably capable of doing it. But what I'm trying to say is that you play the ball, you play the situation, you play the pitch, you play the bowler, you play Test cricket over 5 days. You don't try and finish a match in 2 unless the other team is ridiculously bad. So you've got to be sensible with that. So I don't mind them coming in and saying, let's be positive. That's fine. But it can't be at the expense of rational sanity.
Yeah. As you mentioned, we will get into Brendon McCullum a little bit later. But with the England captaincy, was this the only candidate they looked at? Was it just that clear cut for them? Did they look at domestic captains as we discussed, or was it that Ben Stokes was always going to be captain?
When you saw Rob Key's comments after Ben Stokes was announced, he basically just said, "Yeah, it was." Well, he made out certainly that he was that obvious to him. Sometimes what people say and what people actually think is a different thing, and you're always going to be in Rob Key's position, saying that Ben Stokes was the obvious choice because you're trying to make Ben Stokes feel good and make him feel important. And possibly to Rob Key, it was the obvious choice. I'm sure he sat down and thought it through and thought about a few other names as well and made. But I think from Rob Key's perspective, it was that simple. And to be honest, I could sit here and say James Vince or other people that I would have done. But possibly it is that simple. He's vice captain, vastly experienced, pivotal player. Let's see what he can do with it.
We know Ben Stokes likes to play a lot of cricket. He goes to the IPL, plays white ball cricket. He does play white ball cricket a lot. Because he's now captain and that he is vulnerable to injuries, does he have to step back from those white ball duties, such as IPL 2020, in order to preserve his captaincy and Test career?
I mean, he said as much that he's going to, for him, Test cricket now is priority. What that means in reality, whether it means he plays a few weeks of the IPL or none at all, or I guess it depends on how it fits. What's the word?
Fix the schedule.
How the it fits into the schedule. But I think as England captain, there's usually a Test match. I mean, the Test matches this year start in June in England, which is a little bit later than normal. But usually there's one in May at some stage. But I think if there was that fixture clash, Ben Stokes would be captaining England. I don't think this Ben Stokes as England captain will miss a Test match for the IPL. He's made it clear that Test cricket is his priority for the foreseeable. Certainly while he's captain.
Well, that's music to my ears. I love it when a Test player wants to play Test cricket and not IPL. That's very coming to my ears.
To be honest, I think most England captains have done the same. I mean, Rooty
Yeah.
put his name in the hat for IPL, but he always put English Test cricket first. And I think in this country, whatever level you think Test cricket is in terms of sport and indeed inside cricket, I think everybody that takes the England Test captaincy realizes what an honour it is. As Ben Stokes says,
Oh, yeah.
you don't. It's not something you turn down. That job is massive, and
Yeah.
to be able to call yourself England Test captain and forever, because it's while you're on the pitch doing it, but also for the next, hopefully for Ben Stokes, 50, 60, whatever years, he's able to say, I was England Test captain. It's massive.
Well, as we said earlier, Ben Stokes was announced as captain. Probably no surprise to everyone, the obvious choice. But a big surprise, this one came. England announced their head coach, Brendon McCullum. We didn't even mention Brendon McCullum in our podcast last time, James. We went through all the candidates, domestic candidates. Brendon McCullum was nowhere to be on that list. Bottom of the list. He wouldn't even been bottom. We didn't even think about it. Complete shock. And your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it took me by surprise. Now, I mean, I call me old-fashioned.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking about who was going to be the coach of a Test team, I was thinking they might actually pick somebody that had coached a Red Bull side.
Yeah.
But obviously I'm wrong. Rob Key, fair enough. I mean, I think it's probably there used to be a political program in comedy in the UK where the Prime Minister in the comedy would make a suggestion, and his civil servant advisor would say, "That's a very brave decision, Prime Minister." And basically that became code for, "You're barking mad, you'll go down with the ship if it's wrong." I'm not suggesting that Rob Key is going to be sacked straight away if they lose 2 Test matches off the bounce.
No.
I think, it can go one or two ways, this. It really can. And this could be absolute genius from Rob Key. Appointing Rob Key could be absolute genius, because Rob Key's not really got the qualifications to do the job of director of cricket. Ben Stokes hasn't particularly got the qualifications to be England Test captain, because he's only captained England once in Red Bull cricket, and certainly hasn't got a domestic captaincy CV in Red Bull. Brendon McCullum,
he doesn't. Sorry to interrupt. He doesn't captain Durham.
No.
Wow.
Well, he didn't play for Durham, does he? England Test players and multi-format players don't play for their counties hardly at all. Play for Durham last week or whatever it was, but they play like Joe Root with England with Yorkshire at the moment. Plays 2 or 3 games at the start of the season, then you're into the international calendar. You don't see your county again, really. So Ben hasn't got any real sort of CV in terms of Red Bull captaincy, and Brendon McCullum arrives in this country after obviously having an illustrious career as a captain in the Test arena, but having no experience whatsoever in actually coaching a team in Red Bull cricket. All of his coaching credentials have come from T20 cricket in the IPL for Kolkata Knight Riders and for the Trimbago, whatever they're called in the CPL. So, and there's nothing
wrong. What could go wrong, James? What could go wrong, James?
There's nothing wrong with that. He's dipped his toe into coaching. He's trying to make it his trade. And has had, I think, limited success. It's fair to say. Trimbago won the CPL in 2020, I think it was, but KKR really haven't gone forward under Brendon McCullum's head coaching. So even as a white ball coach, he's not necessarily waving at everybody in the world saying, "I'm the first choice on your list." But he's obviously a terrific cricketer with a great cricket brain, who started the New Zealand Revolution and certainly has a part to play in cricket moving forward. Whether it's the right time for him to come to England and be Test coach, I don't know. And this is what I'm saying. The 3 appointments that they've made, Rob Key as director of cricket, Ben Stokes as England Test captain, Brendon McCullum as the Test coach. None of them have got a CV which completely fits the job description. But that doesn't necessarily mean they can't work. Yeah, Rob Key, I think, Rob Key's an intelligent bloke. He's a cricket nutcase. When he covered cricket on Sky, you listened to him talking, and even if you didn't necessarily agree with some of the stuff he said, he always made the case very eloquently and well. but he's never been in charge of as a manager of on the admin side of stuff. Ben Stokes, terrific cricketer, brilliant cricket brain, competitive as you like, very limited captaincy experience, but it might work. Brendon McCullum, never coached in red ball cricket, takes over Test cricket in England as head coach, but it might work because he's been in Test dressing rooms and he knows how Test cricket works. So it's kind of a little bit of a suck it and see, let's see what happens kind of moment. And I don't know how it's going to go. I really don't. I mean, I hope obviously from an English perspective, Rob Key's a massive success. All the decisions he makes are right. Ben Stokes walks into that Test dressing room and suddenly transforms everything under Brendon McCullum, who walks in and does the same. But it could go horribly wrong as well.
Yeah. Well, like I say, what could possibly go wrong with that, James? Having said that, was this a bit of a desperado move from England? Now, they did interview other coaches. Apparently they interviewed Mahala Joanna, Wiki Ponting, Gary Kirsten, all turned them down. Was this kind of saying, well, we have to get somebody, so who's not going to turn us down? Let's get McCullum, who won't. Was that a bit like that, or was it? Was he
Joe Warner and Ponting were interviewed for the white ball job, weren't they?
Okay. Well, you're the England expert, James, but I know Wiki Ponting was interviewed. Yeah.
And did Kirsten turn them down?
Well,
because that's news to me. I don't know if he did or not.
I heard that he did. That they interviewed Gary Kirsten, and Gary Kirsten. Yeah.
Early on in the process, Kirsten actually made himself massively available, didn't he? And said, "I want to do the test job. If they split the role, I want to do it."
Yeah.
So obviously, if he has turned them down, then he's obviously heard something that he's not so keen on. But I mean, my own traditional, call me old-fashioned view is that you get.
I will never say that about you, James.
You get a Gary Kirsten or a Stephen Fleming or somebody that's actually had loads of experience of not necessarily at test level. I mean, but the staff thing is there's actually people in English cricket that are more qualified than Brendon McCullum to be English Test coach. And the way the world goes sometimes is that the bigger the name you appoint, the better the appointment is. And we all know that not every great player makes a tremendous coach. We see it in football all the time. Legendary footballers retire, go into management, and are absolutely rubbish at it because they just don't know how to deal with poor players or whatever. So just because Brendon McCullum is a name that everybody around the world knows in cricket doesn't mean that he's going to be a great coach. You might find that somebody that has actually a very moderate record as a player, but maybe not even touched international cricket, is actually a better coach. And it's how you, but would he have the respect of the dressing room? Because you know damn well that as soon as Brendon McCullum walks into that dressing room, they'll all be, hey, it's Brendon McCullum. Let's listen to every word he says. So he's going to have a head start from that perspective. But can he follow it through? And I saw Michael Vaughan's piece, and there's not a huge amount of agree with Vaughan on in recent times, but he wrote a piece in the Telegraph that I read this morning where he said that obviously from his take, coach and captain have to get on. You obviously need to get on. You can't be a civil war because
of course
that's just untenable. So you need to be able to get on, but you also need to have kind of maybe a yin and yang kind of perspective a little bit, where you're on the same message, you're going down the same path, but you bring different things to the table a little bit. And Ben Stokes and Brendon McCullum are actually very, very similar kinds of people. So they might just kind of egg each other on down the wrong path, maybe at times. So what Michael was saying was that he felt that they needed to have somebody in that kind of setup who was a little bit more, what's the phrase? Not argumentative, but maybe a little bit more reserved or cautious, and sort of saying, kind of reining them in at times. If they're going down this attack approach, there needs to be a Mr. Cautious there, sort of saying, let's just remember that this is Test cricket. We need to play some defensive shots sometimes.
I'm glad you brought that up because during Brendon McCullum's career, when he took over New Zealand as captain, New Zealand weren't really a powerhouse. They were struggling a little bit. New Zealand were around about 5th to 6th in the world. Brendon McCullum came in as captain, and as you said, attack. Not just with his batting, but his field setting. ridiculous field settings at times during matches that didn't make sense. Only really knew one way. But having said that, that way kind of was successful. We got to New Zealand back to a respectable team as they once were. They won some results, which people didn't expect them to win. Some results. I know he belted my Australia team when he made the fastest 100. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah, belting Stark, Hazel and Lyon all over the place in one session. So, as you said, attack, but his results as captain was actually pretty good. Again, he didn't win a trophy. He didn't win a World Cup, but his white ball and red ball cricket were very successful.
I was a terrific player, terrific captain for New Zealand, no doubt about it. And as you say, didn't win anything, but certainly got them on the road to winning stuff. Kane Williamson has certainly benefited from the work and the foundations that McCullum's captaincy set for New Zealand. Kane's clever enough and a good as captain enough to take that baton and improve stuff and make it better. But Brendon McCullum, absolutely superb. And it's, I mean, I say attack. That sounds, it kind of almost trivializes it. It's not. But
that's the captain he was though. Not just on the. Like I said, not with batting, but on the field as well.
In Test cricket, that isn't trying to hit every ball for six. Is it? It's just being positive on the front foot, not backing down, always looking for a way to win. Push.
Absolutely.
So it's with attacking with a sort of brain attached to it.
Yeah.
But are England good enough to do that right now? I mean, I had a chat with somebody yesterday. The two players that have really impressed me, overseas players that have impressed me in the championship so far. Shan Masood has been absolutely dominating at the top of the Derbyshire order. Last time I looked at the scoreboard today, he was on it well past 50 again, and he's just charging towards 1,000 runs in the championship already. Cheteshwar Pujara, the Indian player, is batting at number 3 for Sussex, and equally scoring century after century for them. It's just a shame we can't just kind of kidnap them and change their passports and make them English. Because if you could put into the current Test team Shan Masood at 1, opening with Alex Lees, stick Pujara in there at 3 with Roots at 4, and then the rest to follow. All of a sudden, England aren't that bad. England are a bloody good Test side. So they are not that far away from actually being a very good Test side. They just need a couple of players to be more consistently scoring runs and taking England forward. At the moment, they've got too many people who are not delivering and averaging 30. But a couple of really good batsmen would change all of that. So Brendon McCullum's coming in actually at a very good time, because England's Test performances over the last so long have been very poor. 1 win in 17, but playing against the best teams there are out there. Played against Australia, India, and New Zealand in that period. So you're taking the baton at a time where really you can only move it in one way. Unless it stays the same, you're not going to get much worse than that over the next 2 years. It's just sod's law, isn't it? You come in as an overseas captain, your first gig, he's taking on your own side. He's taking on New Zealand, so that his opening Test matches are against his own country. So that's going to be interesting. England have got a tough summer ahead. You look at who they're playing. They've got a couple of Test matches against New Zealand, one of the very best sides in the world right now in Test cricket. They play a one-off Test match against India.
That's ridiculous.
One of the very best sides in the world right now.
Yeah.
A South African side that are improving left, right, and centre. So
not that India is ridiculous, but that one-off Test is ridiculous. That does nothing for Test cricket, in my opinion. I know what happened with England and India in the COVID, but to make it a once-off Test match, that's a bit poor, I think, in my opinion.
It's happening. You can moan about it as much as you like. It's happening.
Exactly. I think the ICC need a hard look at themselves with that, because I think India. I understand with
Lucas. There's a show on its own. We could do a 5-hour show on why the ICC are a toothless bunch of people ruling cricket. If only they could be a bit stronger at times, cricket would be in better shape. Yeah.
I think the word "if," James, if pigs could fly when it comes to the ICC. But as you mentioned, the attack or the positive mindset. If you look at Brendon McCullum, the players he captained, BJ Rotling was an aggressive wicketkeeper for New Zealand. He had Tom Latham at the top of his order. I think the only one that played passive cricket was Ross Taylor in his lineup. So if Brendon McCullum wants to go along that path, do England have those players to play aggressive cricket, like as you mentioned in previous podcasts, like Alex Les, who really struggled to play attacking cricket shots. Ollie Pope has struggled to play attacking cricket shots. Does he have to play players domestically to play that way, or does he
Well,
have to change his style?
Ollie Pope doesn't struggle to play attacking shots. Disagree with you there. But
I'll rephrase that. He hasn't got the ability to play attacking shots on the Test level. He can do it domestically. I've heard
he
all
plays
about
them.
it. Yeah.
He plays
Yeah.
them. He comes in and scores a beautiful 24 with four boundaries and looks at $1 million, then gets out. He plays the shots. Yeah, he's got plenty of shots swings to his bow in terms of that respect.
But do they have the players to?
I take what you're saying. That the likes of a Sibley or a Lees or some of these more stoic traditional Test players, are they what a McCullum, Key, Stokes, Axis? I was going to say axis of evil. They're very nice people.
Yes.
Will be trying to actually introduce into cricket. They've got to look at Test cricket and realise that there's a place for that. I know Rob Keyes said in the past that he likes players that play their shots and get out there and that's certainly part of the appeal of him appointing Brendon McCullum. But you can't just attack every ball, can you? I go back to call me old-fashioned, but there is a place in the game still for somebody that actually bats the more traditional Test way and holds at one end, the Cheteshwar Pujara player in Test cricket. So there has to be that version there as well, because often even if you are attack, you need to have somebody in that order which you can try to provide the spine and the solidity so the attacking players can bat around him. So if they are to just go with, from 1 to 7 people whose strike rate in T20 is 160 or more, then it's going to be very short Test matches.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So even if it's successful, it's going to be short Test matches. And I'm sure the ECB will suddenly start to say, well, there are days 3, 4, and 5 in these Test matches. Baz.
Well, like I mentioned, when he was under New Zealand, he had the players like BJ Watling, he had the Tom Lathams, but he also had the Ross Taylors. Ross Taylor, another player that would play passive, get his eye in, play cautiously, block the bad ball.
The thing with the people you've just said there, I mean, BJ Watling's also played some very long innings. I can remember one century or a very big score he scored against England where it was very attritional. In that New Zealand side, you've got, I mean, Latham can bat slowly, but also can counter punch. Kane Williamson, very much the same. They've got all the shots. It's just when they use them.
Exactly.
And I think that's, we talk about in cricket when you're batting the gears. In Test cricket, for me, you start off in first gear, and you bat in first gear until you think, right, I'm in now, or I'm getting myself in. Then you maybe use a couple of second gear, third gear shots, and then when you find yourself 150, 180, 200 not out, you might use fourth and fifth gear. But generally speaking, you play within yourself to give yourself the best chance of being there at lunchtime, tea time, close of play, and to continue into tomorrow. So, and all of the players you mentioned there with New Zealand, the Williamsons, the Lathams, Ross Taylor can, terrific one-day player.
Absolutely,
It's about shot selection, it's about reading the game, and it's about when to attack, isn't it?
Yes, when to attack. That's it's obviously you just say attack or hit every ball six. That's not what I'm trying to say. Finding the right ball to attack, and under his captaincy, McCullum, it seemed to me every bad ball an opposition bowled New Zealand batsman would go after it, instead of like blocking it or leaving it alone. So to ready to play the right cricket shot at the right time, and I think Brendon McCullum under his captaincy seemed to be really aggressive with that mentality. He wouldn't let a bowler off the hook. If he bowled a average ball, Brendon McCullum would go after that, or his players would go after that.
I saw Rob Key say, and I'm going to paraphrase this and probably quote him very badly. He said something along the lines of, "We in England we criticise players for getting out to attacking shots.
Yes,
when we should be when that shouldn't be the case. We want players to play attacking shots." And if they get out to them, then so be it, or whatever. It's along those lines.
Of course,
But you're more the trouble with that is that you are more likely to get out to an attacking shot
Yeah.
because by virtue of the fact that you are trying to hit the ball and hit it longer and further and to boundary, etc., you are taking more risk with that shot.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and to me, it's risk reward because a badly executed attacking shot is an offence and they should be criticised, as
Mm.
is a badly executed forward defensive shot
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
wrong. But there's less danger with that because it's a more
Yeah.
straight bat shot. But it's about playing the right shot at the right time. Yes, of
Exactly.
course. You know, you're going to get a player who plays an attacking shot and gets caught a second slip.
Mm.
As a one-off or a two-off in a series, that's fine because everybody makes mistakes and everybody gets out for
Yeah.
low
Yeah.
scores. You know, Bradman got out for scored ducks at times, but
Mm.
it's when somebody does it all the time. And there's
Yeah.
Zach
Yeah.
Crawley who gets caught in the
Yep.
slip. I mean, Zach Crawley is Rob Key's love child. He loves Zach Crawley. He comes
Yeah.
from Kent.
Yeah.
He bigs him up. I think he's mentored him a little bit. But you can't have somebody who sustains a test career off the back of a century once a year that looks $1 million,
Mm.
and for the rest
Yeah.
of the year gets out edging to slip
Mm.
because the bowlers know that if they put it outside on fifth stump, he's going to get
Yeah.
tempted eventually and get and
Yeah.
snick behind.
Mm.
So what Brendon McCullum, the task for Ben Stokes and Brendon McCullum and Rob Key that's overseeing it isn't to. I've got nothing against the kind of positive approach thing. But it's drumming into players what is expected of them, or what for Zach Crawley. He's got all the shots in the book. He's a terrific
Mm.
player. He can play a forward defensive. He can do. There's no doubt Zach Crawley is a young man with
Of course he can. Yeah.
bags of
Yeah.
potential. He could
Yeah.
go on and have a huge test career. Absolutely no
Yeah.
doubt about it. We've seen some of the 50s and hundreds, the couple of hundreds
Mm.
he's got. It can look at absolute $1 million.
Yeah.
But your average and your stats and the thing you're ultimately judged on is the consistency level. And
Yeah.
you can't score a century every match, but it's
No.
it's
No.
it's battling it to 30 and 40 when you're not playing well to get your team off
Yeah.
to a good start or
Yeah.
something like that. They're almost as crucial in innings as when you get 150 sometimes
Yeah.
because
Of course. Yeah.
you're laying the foundation for other people to then come in and prosper. So I think, I mean, Ollie Pope you mentioned before is
I agree with that heavily.
he's a terrific example, Ollie Pope, of somebody who I think is brilliant. County level, he's averaging 70 something this season.
Yeah.
His average
Yeah.
in first class cricket is over 50.
Yeah.
He's no doubt about it. He's a tremendous player who, if they could just kind of shine up a little bit, could be a tremendous test player. But there's something about Ollie Pope when he walks the crease and he starts a test innings. He looks frenetic. He looks like his brain's racing at 300 miles an hour. And like I said, that's why I kind of came back at you for saying that he's got no attacking shots. He plays the attacking shots too early sometimes, and he plays a run a ball 24 and looks superb, and then gets himself out because he's something inside his head is not making the right decisions at the right time to the right ball when he plays Test cricket. Now, why doesn't he do that at county level? There aren't as many cameras there. There's not people
Yeah.
picking apart his technique. There's not quite the glare and the scrutiny, and so it's a slightly more relaxed thing when you're batting in county cricket. When you know you are the big cheese, you're going to be more consistent. So
That's a very good point. Yeah.
So I think if you're an Ollie Pope or something, and I'd like to think that this is the kind of the new era of English cricket, that Brendon McCullum can maybe instill this into players, that they work out how they think at certain times, and they work out what their role is, and they work out how they're going to construct an innings. If I was Ollie Pope, if I could jump into Ollie Pope's body, not only would I be delighted because I'm miles younger than I am now, and I am far more talented than I am now,
Yeah.
I would go and say to somebody like Jonathan Trotty, can I buy you a pint? Can I buy you a coffee? Can I just go and sit down with you for an hour or two and talk to you about how you played Test cricket? And Ian Bell, who's a very similar kind of player
Yes.
to Ollie Pope, take somebody like that for a coffee and say, look, mate, I'm struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd like your advice. I don't think there's enough people when you get to that level in English cricket to actually say I'm struggling is something which I don't
Mm,
think too many people do, because you're actually saying it. I mean, obviously Silverwood's selecting the team. So if you go to Chris Silverwood and say,
mm,
I'm struggling, Chris, um, what's he going to think? Well, he's actually admitting he's struggling now. He's not playing
mm,
in the next test match. So
mm.
you're putting your place in the team at risk
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think England create an environment where you can say, actually, I'm struggling a little bit here. Dan Lawrence, I'm starting my test career. I'm trying to figure this out. Can I have some help, please? Ollie Pope, can I go and talk to Jonathan Trott or Ian Bell for an hour and say what was going through your head when you walked out there onto the
Mm.
outfield, took your guard, took your first ball? How did you construct an innings? How did you mentally get into that zone where you were
Yeah.
in and playing
I,
Test cricket?
I'm glad you actually mentioned Rolly Palm. I'm glad you came back at me. This is a no filter podcast. If I get something wrong, I want you to be on top of me, like I would give
Oh,
you a
mate,
bagging if you
if we
said
go
something
down
about
that route,
Australia. Yeah, yeah,
I'm never going to
absolutely.
stop. I'm never going to stop
Nah,
interrupting you.
good, good. That's good. That's what this podcast is about. That's what I'm about. I want pressure. But I'm glad you mentioned Ollie Pope
No, you
because you
don't.
said
You don't. I don't agree with that. You don't want pressure. Carry on.
that. Not from you. But no, you mentioned something about Ollie Pope. You said that at times when he comes to the crease, he feels like his head's a million miles an hour. But if you go to Brendon McCullum, who's also got that mentality, he's a million mile an hour mentality. How can Ollie Pope, go to Brendon McCullum with that same mentality and say, "What do I do?" If Brendon McCullum's mentality is the same.
Well, I wouldn't. If I was Ollie Pope, I wouldn't pick Brendon McCullum to have that
Yeah,
conversation with.
yeah, yeah,
I'd pick a Jonathan Trotter. I'd pick a somebody else that an Ollie,
yeah,
an Ian Bell, somebody else that's kind of performed the
yeah,
same middle. Or
yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, Graham Thorpe. Wish you well, Thorpe, if you're watching this.
Yeah, we do.
He would have been another ideal kind of
Mm,
candidate for that. To actually, how do I construct an innings as a middle order batsman that wants to play this way? How do I go about doing this? I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for help.
mm. No, of course not. No, no.
Everybody needs
No,
help. You need
uh,
more than most, mate.
well, I'm doing this show with you almost every day, so I'm getting better. I'm learning from the master. Um, but no, I 100% agree with that. At all levels, everybody needs help. Not just to international level, but domestic level, grassroots level is just as important. So I agree with that heavily. Now back to McCallum and his tactics. As you said, England play New Zealand in June, 3-test series or a 2-test series.
Cool.
Another thing that I can't stand with the ICC. But anyway, now let's say with that mentality, it goes absolutely wrong. Complete disaster. They get rolled 2-0. Everybody says it's time to go. McCallum gets slandered. Rob Key gets slandered. What happens in that situation? Do you say no? Listen, we just can't give him 2 test matches. Come on, let's give
No,
him let's give him a 2-year period or to
he's
the
signed, he's signed a
Ashes.
he's signed
Yeah,
a 4-year
yeah,
deal, I think, by the
yeah,
sounds of it. So
yeah,
it's not very
yeah,
unlikely they're going to sack him
yeah.
after 2 Test matches.
No,
I,
absolutely, that's ridiculous. But when do you
I,
say
I,
if results do not come their way?
I don't
What
think you.
stage do you say no?
I mean, you can start to make some judgments, obviously,
Yeah,
off
yeah,
the first few
yeah,
Test matches of this
yeah,
new England,
yeah.
but you can't condemn them
No,
or praise them massively.
yeah,
Equally, if they play these 2 Test matches and batter New Zealand, I wouldn't
mm,
get too carried away by that, because the proof will
yeah,
be in the pudding over a longer period. If they play New Zealand and New Zealand batter England, I won't get too
yeah,
down about that, because the
yeah,
proof will be over a longer period. But
yeah,
you'll get a few little insights of what's happening. You'll get a few little
mm,
guides as to where any changes to the England personnel, obviously, but also their approach and how they go about stuff. But no, you can't. No, you
yeah,
can't judge. As I say, it's a tough summer that England have got ahead.
mm,
2 tests against New Zealand, 1 against India. Then I think was it 3 or 4 against South Africa towards the end of the summer.
yeah.
And
I
South
think
Africa are getting good.
exactly. They are. Yeah.
Their test cricket is starting to really come together.
Mm,
So it's not an easy
surprisingly.
summer ahead for England. And the 7 test matches across the summer, which are all going to be tough. and it's going to be interesting to see how they go about it. But I mean, it comes to something. I mean, over the last few years, England have always, or the ECB, have seemed to have the attitude: we're going to win at home, we're going to entertain our home fans and show them victories. And when we go away abroad, doesn't quite matter as much because out of sight is out of mind,
Yeah.
and then we'll be good again next summer. But
Uh,
the standard has dropped so much now that you can't guarantee
yeah.
home success with England. So it's going to be
I,
a tough summer.
I think that mentality is a disgrace within itself.
I'm not saying
Australia
it's not,
do, yeah,
but it is the mentality they've had.
yeah. No, Australia do that mentality a lot. Well, they do. They as long Australia's mentality, as long as they win in front of their home fans, who cares what they do away? I think that's pathetic. I think it's weak.
I'm not saying I
Um,
don't think
yeah,
it's not so much who cares what we do away, but
yeah,
it's almost
yeah,
like if we
yeah,
win away, it's a bonus.
yeah, yeah.
And away from home, maybe we can tinker
Do
with things a little bit.
do you
But
personally see that in the White Ray? If we win away, it's a bonus, or do you think no, that's a bad attitude?
I
We want to
think
win
every
every
test
test.
match it means as much as any other test match.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm with it.
I think
I hate it when it's
I mean, whether you're playing away in Bangladesh or playing away in Australia or home
absolutely.
against South Africa or home against Pakistan, it's a test match. It's a test cap, the test wickets, the test runs. They should all be treated with the same degree of importance.
Do you think the media in your country let England get away with far too much outside of England, barring Ashes tours?
I don't know if they let them get away with it, but it's easily forgotten as soon as they start winning at home again. Yeah,
What I mean is sweeping it under the carpet.
Yeah, we've just had an Ashes defeat away from home. They got hammered by the press.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously.
Absolutely
Ashes,
annihilated by the press, and quite rightly because they were awful.
Yeah.
But but that will be quickly forgotten if they beat New Zealand 2-0.
Mm.
So
see, in a way, I think that's wrong.
There's a short-term memory for the bad bits.
Yeah. Yeah. Australia do that a lot. They sweep it under the carpet. You know, we've got Test series coming up in Sri Lanka, and I think that's the most crucial series in 3 years, in my opinion. Now I know the Ashes are
even England won in Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that. Trust me, I'm sick to death of losing outside of Asia. I don't know what it's like. Yeah, we won in Pakistan on the world's
what you need
flattest
to do,
pitches,
Lucas, is get Joe Root an Australian passport
exactly.
to try and win in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I won't laugh at that. I actually agree with you because he's the only one that can play spin outside of the Asian countries and in India as well. We might need him for India.
Keaton Jennings can, and he's got a double century against Yorkshire over the last couple of days. But
I don't. Yeah, well, we'll keep that one on standby, but we'll be happily with Root. But the point is that I think media, as long as they win in England or as long as they win in Australia, you know, we can sweep everything under a carpet away, and I think that's just a bad attitude.
I think in England, the media will report it the same way regardless. Okay. But the ECB's approach is to, we want to sell tickets for home test matches, so let's win at home.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
we've spoken about this before as well. I love the Ashes. Don't get me wrong; it's a great event, but
it's number one for me.
It's no more important playing an Ashes series than it is playing a series against Bangladesh for me. You win what's in front of you. You win. We hype up the Ashes so much. I mean, it's got the history. It's got and so don't get me wrong, it's important.
Absolutely,
but we hype up the Ashes so much at the expense of everything else, almost to a degree.
Well, I 100% agree with that. Like I said, we battered England in the Ashes straight away. I was like, all right, back it up against Pakistan. You won in Pakistan. Back it up in Sri Lanka, where we've been absolutely miserable there. Back it up. No point beating England 4-0 and then going to Asia and absolutely getting thrashed.
Yeah, great.
I'm glad we said that. Now, speaking of players and domestic counties, now we've spoken about Brendon McCullum, we've spoken about Ben Stokes. Time to speak about the English county cricket. No more experience than you, James, because you go to the games. Is there anyone that has caught your eye outside of the Sibleys, the Popes, or the players that have currently been in that 11, like a Tom Abel who scored 100, I think yesterday. Ben Duckett for Nottinghamshire's scored some runs, big runs. Who's impressed you the most in the domestic county.
I think there's been a few out there. Hassi Bamid got a century yesterday for Notts as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
There's some good batsmen out there. I mean, Haynes at Sussex. It's funny actually because somebody said to me once, it was somebody quite close to the ECB selection for Test matches. I had a chat with that person once, and they said sometimes when you actually put out there, I think actually intentionally at times, they feed a story to a paper that X person is being watched to see how they played then. Because it's, I'm going to talk about Tom Haynes now. I've never actually seen him in the flesh. Very well thought of, scored a big, was it double 100, wasn't it, earlier on in the season? And he's, certainly when people are talking about first Test match, his name comes up quite a lot. Ben Compton's name comes up quite a lot. Josh Bohannon at Lancashire.
Yes, that's the name I see regularly. Yeah.
Tom Abel comes up quite a lot.
Yeah.
I found, Harry Brook, obviously, at Yorkshire is scoring ridiculous amounts of runs. But the strategy was, let's put it on the back page of the paper. Say Harry Brook for England. See what he scores in the next two matches after that when the pressure's on and he knows he's being watched. Because that's then, to some degree, replicates being called up to play in the first Test match when the glare is on you and there's 24 cameras in the grounds and you are massively under pressure. And that's not a bad strategy, really. Let's see how you perform now when you know that you're on the radar.
They do it in the Sheffield Shield a lot. They do it in the Sheffield Shield a lot.
So, but I mean, Harry Brook is the man that I think is most likely to break into the team. There's two vacancies for me with England's, Lucas. I think you've got an opening partner for Alex Lees, which if Rob Key plays safe and goes to form, will pick Zach Crawley to continue doing what Zach Crawley does. I'd like to see. Yeah. I'd personally like to see Zach Crawley, given the rest of the summer playing for Kent, and actually score, because he's not bought a run so far in this county championship. He's not scoring runs.
I actually laughed at that. If you want to make this podcast audio on your show, but the reason I laughed at that, how can you bring in a player? Right, this is what I don't like. How can you bring in a player that got absolutely smashed in the Ashes? In the Indian series, and then all of a sudden bring him back. That does that not make any sense to you? Why would you not go for a younger player?
I can see the temptation because Zach is obviously talented, and I can see why you try and keep picking him, because if a switch is flicked in his head and it suddenly clicks into gear, he could be brilliant in Test cricket. But he's not. He can't score a run for Kent this season, let alone England.
But that's not just for him. I see a lot of people say, "Oh, write down your 11 for England," and I see Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Pope. I'm thinking those are the players that got you into this mess. Why would you want to bring them back if they got you? Yeah.
I agree to an extent, but they were picked to start with for a reason. A lot of those guys, and I mean Sibley for a start is somebody who, I mean, he's only scored 100 I think this season, but by all accounts is playing a lot better and looks a lot better. He's kind of opened up the offside as well as the leg side, and although it hasn't necessarily manifested itself in 100 after 100, he's starting to score runs and looks better, and to a degree I think there's a lot of mileage in he's been there, he's experienced it, he knows how to score runs in Test cricket, he knows what's required of him, he knows what it feels like to fail. He's gone away and worked at it. So isn't he better equipped than somebody that you just take off the shelf who has never experienced Test cricket? And there's I think there's massive pluses with that, of going back to a Dom Sibley who knows what is required and knows what to expect. I can see that, so I'm not. I wouldn't knock that by any means. And Sibley may not be the sexiest batsman in the world. Sexy Sibley is never going to be his nickname, but he is, as we said earlier, being the dour person that the rest of the team bats around isn't the worst thing in the world to do.
No, no.
But maybe
Yeah.
Alex Lees is the man to do that, and maybe they need somebody more dynamic at the other end to open the batting with Lees.
Okay, so you mentioned the opening position might be up for grabs. You said there was another position that's up for grabs. Is that number?
For me, they've got a situation where you've got your number one should be Alex Lees because he's the man in the man in position and is also scored runs already for Durham this season, so he should continue. I think his opening partner. If you ask me what I think, then Lees' opening partner would be somebody else. If you ask me what I think the ECB will do and who they will pick, it will be Zach Crawley to continue with Lees into the English summer. So that conversation.
Ben Slater's another one that I didn't name, who's also scored a amount of runs. Who's an opener.
Slats is a player I've got a lot of time for. But I think they'll go with Crawley. So we could discuss opening partners for Lees forever. But I think Crawley will certainly start the summer, despite the fact that he's not scoring any runs. At number 3 is interesting. Who's going to go at number 3?
Because Root said he'll drop Ronnie.
Root's going to go back to 4. So
do you agree with that?
He's had loads of success at 4. He prefers 4. I mean, to be honest, it comes down to it. Where Joe Root bats is the least of England's problems because you can rely on Rooty.
Of course.
And Ben Stokes is going to go down to number 6. So, who bats?
Which is a move that you really liked.
I've been saying he should bat at 6 for the last 4 years. So I can't exactly argue against that now. But I think so. It's going to be interesting to see. So three is up for grabs. Who that's going to be? Bahanan potentially. You've got
Duckett.
You could even go with somebody like a Hasib Hamid or even a Ben Slater, an opener to bat at 3. Isn't the most stupid thing in the world, is it? Because he might be opening anyway, almost.
Well, Joe Root was the opener for 12 months there, James. So no big difference.
Having an opener at number 3 who might be facing the new ball anyway isn't the daftest thing in the world. So it'd be interesting to see where they go with that. But there seems to me, though, to be a queue around the block for batting at number 5 for England. It's possibly headed at the moment by Johnny Bairstow, but you've got Ollie Pope, Dan Lawrence, you've got James Vince potentially. I could probably list you 15 names of all of the players who are making a case to play for England are all probably number 5s. So unless an Ollie Pope is trusted to go to number 3 or a Dan Lawrence is trusted to go to number 3, I don't think they get past Bairstow at the moment. So on that basis, they don't play.
Just on that, is it disappointing that Bairstow is not playing county cricket? Now, obviously,
he's playing IPL, isn't he?
Yeah, I understand financial concerns, but you have, as you said, there's a queue for 5. All these players making runs, and if you're one of those players, and you see Bairstow get picked, who hasn't played any county season, that can be a bit demoralising, and you start to question yourself. Do you agree with that?
I'd agree with the sentiment behind it, but it's hard to drop a player that scored, was it 3 centuries in his last 4 Test matches or whatever he's done?
He was fantastic in the Ashes, and that West Indies tour,
So he's got the shirt, hasn't he?
Yeah. So should he be playing county cricket instead of IPL, in your opinion?
No.
Okay.
Because the ECB's allowed them to go to play for the IPL.
Okay.
If the ECB had said, no, you can't go and play in the IPL, Johnny, and then he'd gone off anyway, then no, you'd be right. On the basis that the door is open for him to go off as a multi-format player to play in the IPL, he's doing exactly what's right for his balance and him, isn't he?
Well, he does play white ball cricket for England, so.
And I've never had any objection with a player making the most money he possibly can do.
No, of course not. No, I've unless it comes at expense for Test cricket, then I have a problem with that. As you said, I'm old school like you, but. I don't. I get smashed a lot for discrediting IPL and players. I have no problem with players trying to. IPL is the best. So even our boss is watching this. I have no problem with
IPL
players going.
IPL is the best white ball tournament.
Yeah,
he's right.
Yeah. I have no problem with players playing IPL, Big Bash, Caribbean Premier League. Got absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. This is what people get confused about. I have a problem with it when you put Test cricket in front of it. Like we saw with South Africa, that absolute South Africa debacle against Bangladesh, where 6 players chose IPL over Test cricket. That concerns me.
That is more, to be honest, that's more understandable in South Africa.
Yeah,
because South Africa,
with the financial, the
South African international players get paid.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd take the check that
yeah,
they get, but they get paid far less than an English international. So
I understand that completely. Yeah.
But Kahisa Rabada playing in the IPL
Yeah.
for 6 weeks earns, was it 10 or 14 times what he gets paid by South Africa? I mean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, for Rabada?
Yeah.
So it's massively unfortunate for South African cricket, but ultimately the South African board, knowing their financial structure and knowing that effectively the IPL allows Rabada to play international cricket for the rest of the year because he's got enough money in his bank account to be able to then play for South Africa. You've almost got to, as the South African Cricket Board, not play international cricket in April and May, haven't you?
Yeah, very, very unfortunate, but that's the only time where I'll have a problem with that, when you put it in front of
the I actually this year, excuse me, drafted out the international calendar, and there weren't that many international played in April and May because most cricket boards are now realizing that you are going to devalue international cricket if you play it up against the IPL, because people obviously want to play in the IPL. And if you play Test cricket during April and May, and then you say to your players you can't go to the IPL, then you start to get situations why you you get that kind of resentment, don't you? So it makes sense not to play international cricket in April and May. Where it becomes a problem, Lucas, and where it becomes a far bigger problem is there's been tweets and articles this week about BCCI wanting to talk to the ICC about extending an IPL and making it longer.
Ridiculous.
Now, if you start to do that and you start to make it April, May, and June for sake of argument or whatever, and you effectively take up a quarter of the year or even a third of the year if they really get their wish, then you start to decimate international cricket because you are taking out half of England's home season. It just makes it a joke, doesn't it?
As you said, James, we can make a 5-hour show about how gutless, spineless the ICC are. But we will move on.
I've got nothing against the Indian BCCI having their own domestic competition.
No,
I've got
of
nothing
course.
against. I've got nothing against them ringing it in whatever way they want to and making it however they like and playing it however they like and changing the rules to do whatever they want to do in it. It's their competition. They should be very proud of it. The IPL is fantastic, but you've also got, I think, as a member state of the ICC, have some kind of responsibility to other countries and other nations and to fit into that world calendar, because if cricket ends up only being played in India because the Indian team dominates and the IPL dominates and then there are very few crumbs for the rest of the world, you end up becoming like American sport and saying we're the world champions because basically you're the team in America that won the competition.
Ridiculous. Yeah, ridiculous. Govia said in the comments, De Kock retired early because of financial issue or something else. I think that something else is a political thing, and I don't really want to discuss that. James, if you want to comment on that.
I think that, for any South African cricketer, we saw a lot of the Colpacks in English county cricket. Yeah, the money you can earn in South Africa playing cricket is, as we said, quite small compared to what you can earn elsewhere. And De Kock is no different. If De Kock plays, I mean, you can't knock the fella because I would probably do the same if I was him.
Yeah,
because you can play the Caribbean Premier League, you can play the Sri Lankan, whatever, you can play the Bangladesh, whatever, you can play the Big Bash, the IPL. You can play pretty much all year round, playing white ball cricket, smacking the ball as far as you can, picking up a huge amount of money, making your family secure forever, just by smacking a white ball around. Whereas the Test cricket, playing for South Africa, you earn less, you have to work a hell of a lot harder, and what would you do? I mean, you'd be certainly tempted to do the Kock route, wouldn't you?
Well, in a way, it's very blessed that you play for England, you play for India, you play for Australia, because financially you're very secured
Yeah.
compared to South Africa, compared to a Sri Lanka, who are another political statement, but they're in problems with themselves outside of cricket. So West Indies is also another one that's slowly getting back slowly. So in a way, we're quite fortunate to be in such wealthy countries that have money behind their sports, like in England, like in Australia, like in India.
The biggest challenge,
And it,
to me, the biggest challenge for world
yeah,
cricket over the next few years is, or the next, well, hopefully, we're talking about this for another 50 years, because that means Test cricket is still actually alive. But it's how to actually spread the wealth a little bit more,
yeah,
and
I
so
agree with that. Yeah,
support some of these smaller nations. I say
yeah,
smaller with respect, but the Sri
of
Lankans, the
course.
South African nations, those kind of, so that they can actually be competitive and keep their best players happy.
Uh, and the same goes for Ireland and Afghanistan. What are they doing? You brought in a Test license for them to play Test cricket, and then they're not playing Test cricket.
Well, the
So why
answer to
give
your
them a Test
question, Lucas,
license?
is that they're not doing anything, are they?
Exactly. So I think that
Yeah.
why give them a license? But again, like I said, we could have a 5-hour show about the ICC.
And we could also have
Um,
we could also probably have a 5-hour show about Afghanistan,
yeah.
because
Well, another nation that gets Test status and plays absolutely no Test matches, zero. And I don't even think
I,
they play international cricket. I don't even think they play white ball
I'll
cricket.
try and get through this sentence or this paragraph very quickly, because I know you're running
Go
out of
on.
time. But the
Go ahead, James.
Afghanistan is one of the most beautiful stories in world cricket. You have
Yeah.
people in refugee camps picking up tape balls, ripping branches off trees to play cricket in their encampments, effectively refugee encampments. That turned very, very quickly into
Yeah.
an Afghanistan national team that came up through the ICC leagues, playing in very, very small countries, beating them, rising up the ranks until they're at the top table of international cricket these days, playing well in World Cups and
Yeah.
playing Test cricket. They also had a women's team, and the women's team
Yeah.
was doing what it could do on the world stage as well. Then
Yeah.
the Taliban takes control in Afghanistan. The women are told to go home, put down their bats, don't play again. Your place is in the home, and that is wrong. Um, I don't know what world cricket can do about it. I don't know I don't know what the answer is.
Nothing.
The,
I don't
the,
think they can
the,
do anything.
the answer isn't to ban Afghanistan, because if you
No.
ban
No.
Afghanistan, you basically penalise the men as well, don't you?
Yeah.
But
So
how?
yeah.
I don't think the world cricket can do anything, but it's tragic that
Yeah.
women cricketers that have started to get freedoms and started to get playing the sport that we love, and they love too. I think a few have defected and are playing overseas now, but there are many of them that are basically stuck at home being told you can't do this anymore, and that's just wrong, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely tragic, because I think cricket nations like Afghanistan, it's no, they're not a powerhouse, but it's a feel good story. Everything they do feels like a feel good story.
But they're becoming more
Um,
of a powerhouse.
yeah, yeah,
Their rise to
especially
the
in
top
white ball
table
cricket.
was,
Yeah,
yeah, their
yeah,
rise to the top table was so
yeah.
meteoric. You can
Oh
imagine,
yeah,
and the Rashid Khans and the Mohammed Nabis,
yeah,
etc., have
yeah,
inspired, the generation
mm,
beneath them, hopefully, so that
yeah,
in 10 years' time there'll be two Rashid Khans in the side instead of one,
yeah,
and there'll be,
yeah,
then,
yeah,
then they will start to batter teams. So,
mm,
um, if the progress continues, or even just kind of like curves down a little bit,
mm.
um, they're still going to be improving all the time.
And as you said, by banning Afghanistan, these players like Rashid Khan, who plays for the Strikers in the Big Bash League, how can you make another Rashid Khan if he's not playing cricket? No, by
Well,
banning them, that's a disgrace.
I mean, it's hard enough to make one Rashid Khan because he's
Yeah.
unique, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
But I mean, they've got serious talent coming through.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
got they've got some youngsters in that country who are going to be mega stars in the future. And I just wish there were the women that had started playing the game had the same opportunities, and they just don't, and that's just really, really sad to me. I mean, you look at Rashid Khan's. I mean, obviously Afghanistan don't have a major first class structure.
Yeah.
Rashid Khan's played 9 first class games. 5 of them have been Test matches. He's played 58 T20 internationals, 80 one-day internationals, 323 T20
That's a disgrace.
games around the world. It's not a
Yeah,
disgrace; it's his career,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it's what's
Oh
available
no,
to him. It's
no,
what's
not.
available to him.
Yeah, I'm not calling him a disgrace. He's a world class player. But what I'm saying is that he hasn't had the opportunity to play the best format of cricket because the ICC have not allowed him to play more matches. And I think that's a disgrace within itself. Not actually,
It's,
Khan's a disgrace,
it's
but
a disgrace that he's only played 5
yeah,
Test matches.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the fact he's played only 9 first-class games, you could
yeah.
argue, well, that's maybe a little bit down to him because he signs for Sussex to play the T20 Blast. Hang on a couple of weeks and play a couple of championship matches.
Yeah, if Rashid Khadra are watching, please play for our Redbacks team. Damn it, we need a spinner, please. Stay. What? Go on, James.
Ignore the man with the cap on, Rashid. Come and play for Yorkshire. Come and play for Yorkshire, lad.
Trust me, we need him more than you need him at Yorkshire. Trust me.
I think if he was going to play Championship cricket for anybody, it'll be for Sussex, where he's had many happy matches in the Blast.
Yeah, but anyway, James. Actually, I will discuss these quickly because we are running time. Anyone from the bowling perspective has caught your eye in the county championships? We mentioned the batting.
I'm just going to say 2 things very quickly.
Go ahead, James. Take your time. That's all right.
Josh Bohannon, his reputation has started to rise. I was at Headingley yesterday, watched him for the first time in the flesh. Lots shorter, actually, Josh Bohannon, than I thought he was. But quite kind of built like a keeper rather than anything else. He was out very quickly for 2. I couldn't really judge him on that basis. But I was talking to a Lancashire member who basically said it's ridiculous that the people are even thinking about Josh Bohannon. He's a terrific player. He's averaging 46 or whatever in first-class cricket. He scored 400s. He needs to bang in a few more hundreds. He needs a season where he bangs in sort of 6 centuries, scores 1,500 runs or whatever. But it shows you where England are in terms of their selection, in terms of their desperation to try and find players to fit into these vacancies. This is nothing against Josh Bohannon. I'm sure he's a terrific bloke, and I'm sure I didn't see the best of him yesterday. But well, I know I didn't because he was out for 2. But I'm sure he's possibly got a Test future. But we're picking players. I mean, it's like people are talking about Ben Compton. Ben Compton's, by all accounts, a very attractive, played straight, and then scored loads of runs. You look at his career; he's hardly scored runs at all. He's very embryonic. He might be older, but he's had to battle his way through some problems in the past. But he's not played that much cricket. I'd like to see him get another season under his belt before he's talked about as an England opener. We are starting to say scrape the barrel is massively disrespectful to Bohannon and Compton because they're not the bottom of the barrel. But we're starting to look at players that traditionally don't really deserve to be looked at just yet, or if they're looked at, they're on England Lions trips rather than going straight into the team. Harry Brook for Yorkshire, he's banged in century after century this season, but he's still young. He's still learning the game. You throw him into Test cricket now and it goes wrong, do you put him back 5 years? Hopefully it would go right for him. If you put him in, then you've got to put him in and trust him and stick with him if he fails, because otherwise you scar the lad. He's undoubtedly talented. Bowling wise, a lad called Potts I was watching on the streams the other day at Durham, bowling really well, taking loads of wickets. He looks decent. I mean, we'll mention him again. Matty Parkinson at Lancashire. At some stage, England, please bloody pick the lad because he's terrific.
I was going to mention a spinner from Nottinghamshire, Patterson White, who's taken the most wickets.
Yeah.
Seemed to pick up a couple of fivers.
Not seen a huge amount of him, but he's certainly doing the business. So yeah, I mean,
any other spinners that are catching your eye that could play? Is Leach a dead set lock in?
Dad, it's hard to tell, isn't it? Because it's a new, it's a new selector, new director of cricket, new captain, new coach. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, that first squad they pick for New Zealand, which isn't going to be. They must be announcing that this weekend, you'd think. So it's not far away, that first test. That first squad's going to be quite interesting, isn't it? Do they
Yeah.
stick with the tried and trusted, the people that Ben Stokes has shared a dressing room with for the last 5 years, the people that he trusts as human beings?
Mm.
Do they go back to a Joss Butler who Brendon McCullum suddenly
Yeah.
thinks, well, I can get something more out of him than the previous
Yeah.
regime have? Because you see it a lot in football, and people sign players that have failed in their previous team. They then go somewhere else and fail again, but the manager has thought that they're better, and their ego has thought, well, I can get more out of him. So
Yeah.
do they go?
Are you afraid that could happen? That they could go back to a Burns, they could go back to a Sibley, and then they fail again? And you
Mate, I'm
think,
not afraid. I'm not afraid of
yeah,
anything.
no,
I've,
you're not.
I've,
No, no,
I've seen
no.
so much go
Yeah,
wrong with English cricket that
yeah.
nothing surprises me anymore.
But if that
I
happens,
wouldn't, I
if that
wouldn't,
happens again,
I wouldn't be desperately disappointed if it went back to
yeah,
Sibley or Burns. They may have
yeah,
got something to offer. They
yeah,
may be the best that England have. Yeah, they might not be the best Test cricketers in the world, but they may be the best openers that England have. But I hope Alex Lees gets a run
yeah,
and gets a bit more time.
yeah,
I would be massively disappointed if they go back to Joss Butler, because that would just be the wrong decision, and it'd be wrong for him. It'd be wrong for Joss, because we've seen what happens to Joss Butler in the IPL. If you take the red ball out of his brain and you make him just think about being
mm,
inventive and playing shots in the IPL against white balls, he's the best in the world. If you start to bring the white ball into his left ear, and the red ball into his right ear, and you start to,
mm,
he gets confused, doesn't he? Bless him,
mm,
and it goes
mm.
horribly wrong. So please, England, if anybody is watching out there, Rob Key, I'm looking you in the eye. I'll give you Zach Crawley. You can have him. He's your baby. If you want to try and get the best out of him, there is a level or two up for Zach Crawley. I can see why you might do that. Do what you like with England. Brendon McCullum, welcome. Ben Stokes, good luck, mate. But please, for God's, I know you said something else. Please, for God's sake,
That's
please
okay, James.
don't go back to Joss Butler. We've done it. The experiment has lasted far too long. Folks, there are other keepers out there as well. Allow Joss to blossom in the white ball arena. He's the best in the world at that. He can, when Owen Morgan leaves the captaincy, give the captaincy of the white ball team to Joss. Trust in him to lead England to white ball glory. But please don't put him in the whites again.
And with that note, actually, just one comment that I wanted to talk to you before that. Kevin Peterson, again, as you've mentioned with Michael Vaughan, a lot of people don't really listen to him, but Kevin Peterson, once again, when Ben Stokes made that amazing 150 off 50 balls, yeah, and Kevin Peterson came out and said, "This is why you franchise county cricket." I don't want to talk about that per se, but is he right when it comes to the quality of the English county?
Did he open his mouth and speak, Lucas?
Yeah.
He was wrong then. In all seriousness, Kevin Peterson blocked me about 4 years ago, so I don't ever really see. I only see secondhand what he says. But he is a person that I have a huge amount of time for when I listen to him talking about batting and how to bat. There is no doubt the guy was a genius, and the guy was a class above a lot of the stuff that England have produced. A lot of in terms of batsmen over the last few years. And when he talked about his views on the championship, it can certainly be improved. I'm never somebody that thinks anything should stand still. If you can improve it somehow, go for it. That might be pitches, it might be the structure, it might be the way the tournament's played. Certainly, it could be the months that the tournament's played in. When it comes to there is always scope for improving. Whether the counties can be more professional, whether they can be run better.
When you
scope for improving, but Kevin Peterson is the worst person in the world to make that assessment. Kevin Peterson came across from South Africa when he was desperately trying to play cricket. Came across as a youngster who, in a franchise environment, would never have got an opportunity. He was played by Nottinghamshire. They threw his bag out the window because he didn't get on with them. But he scored runs for them, and he made his way in the game, and he became a Test great for England. He would not have had that opportunity if there'd only been 10 or 12 teams.
Yeah.
If you reduce it to 10 or 12 teams, you reduce the number of shirts available, you reduce the opportunities. Surely the whole point of playing the game is to increase the opportunities, increase the shirts available, make it easier for players to get in. Now, ultimately, if they're not good enough, bin them, get rid of them. If they're not good enough, get rid of them. That's not the issue. Giving the opportunities out there. If you reduce the number of teams, Lucas, and you take, say, a Durham out of the equation, look at the English map, take the Durham out of the equation, take a Somerset out of the equation, you then make whole masses of the country up there. They'd have to travel 3 hours to get to their local county ground. You're not going to do that. You're going to take up football. You'll take up clay pigeon shooting. You'll go off and do something completely different. So we need to get the game spread so that people have the opportunities and they take up the game and can see a route through. And we need to get the game so that everybody that plays county cricket isn't from a public school. You can be at a state school and get the opportunities too. There are other ways of improving cricket that don't involve killing off counties.
I strongly agree. They try to do that with Sheffield Shield. So I completely agree with that. But when you see Ben Stokes demoralise a young bowler, well, I don't know if he was young, when he hit 34 last week off him, does that make you think he does have a point?
Did you suggest that Pat Cummins, Josh Hazlewood, Nathan Lyon should retire from Test cricket when Ben Stokes took them apart at Headingley?
From that day, yes.
No, I'm serious though. You didn't, did you?
Yeah, well,
because they're great bowlers. They're great.
Well,
bowlers.
They had me. Well, he had me in tears. He had me in tears at 2 a.m.
You didn't suggest anything of the sort, because they're great bowlers, and on another day they will have Ben Stokes' number. Ben Stokes is a great player, and Ben Stokes on that day took Australia apart and won the Test match. The lad that bowled for Leicestershire, sorry, no, it wasn't Leicester, Worcestershire. Is apparently, I've not seen him play apart from that day, is apparently very well thought of. Is apparently got a lot of about him and a lot of talent. He came up against a Ben Stokes in the mood to basically batter everybody. And we all know that Ben Stokes has that zone where he basically just brutalizes an attack, and he can do that to anybody, as I've just said, anybody.
Yeah.
So hopefully that lad has something about him.
Yeah.
He thinks about the experience.
Yeah.
Maybe has a laugh about the experience, learns from the experience, and grows as a result of that, and actually fulfills the potential that a lot of people at Worcestershire say that he's got. Ben Stokes, fair play to him, messaged him apparently afterwards and asked if he was okay and gave him some advice. So that is what sport's about.
Yeah.
Some days it goes for you, some days it doesn't. Some days you come up against a Ben Stokes that smashes you all over the place. Another day you'll bowl at Ben Stokes and get him out for naught, hopefully. So,
thanks.
And it doesn't mean the lad's a bad player.
Well, thanks for opening that old scar wound of me crying at 2 a.m. Ben Stokes demoralising our bowlers, but.
So I mean, but you can't make that judgment, because Ben Stokes brutalised Australia that day.
Yeah. Well, at the time,
and it doesn't mean Pat Cummins is the best bowler in the world.
No. Well, at the time, you were going to say something very naughty with the swear word. I mean, I was like that after Ben did that. I was like, sack the whole bleep of a lot of you. But no, we hope that young man comes back. Anyway, James, very nice pleasure doing you this once again. And we'll see you tomorrow when England announce their team, because since you're the only, we can't get rid of you. But no, of course, we'll.
I'm really hoping they actually go, if they're going to. Well, just one last point from me, and I know we've gone on for hours. I'm hoping if they come in and they go down this positive route, and obviously the signs are that Key's positive, Stokes is positive, McCullum's positive, so it'd be very surprising if they played dour negative Test cricket.
Yeah.
If they're going to go down this positive route, pick a team that can deliver it. Go down the Harry Brook route. Go down the Zach Crawley route. Go down a route where it's going to be full throttle Test cricket. You might fall flat on your face once in a while, but another day it might be incredibly entertaining. It's never going to be dull. That if you're going to go down that route, do it full throttle and do it right. If you're going to live by the sword, die by the sword. If you're Brendon McCullum, come in and be a breath of fresh air and go for it. It might be there's days that people like me are slating you left, right, and centre because we don't agree with what it's doing. But if you're going to do it, have the courage of your convictions, pick a team that delivers it, and go for it.
Absolutely, and we'll leave that alone. As you said, we will see you, not tomorrow, just joking, but we will see you before the New Zealand series in June. Or maybe not.
What happens, Lucas, is that Gareth messaged me and says, "Oh, we're out of the blue after never hearing him for about 5 weeks. Out of the blue, just says, I'm ready now. Are you available?"
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, I'm sitting at Headingley watching the cricket.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. I saw that Twitter. I said he might be at the Headingley game. In fact, Groovy might actually be doing this podcast with you next time because depending on my mood, as I said, we've got an important tour of Sri Lanka. And depending on my mood, I might not be up for facing you because I'm sure you're gonna mention some few words and
one last point. And this is the last point before we say goodbye.
Yeah,
I wish Sri Lanka every success.
Oh, well, like I said, you're going to say explicit word. I might actually say a lot of those words. So, for God's sake, Australia, please win in Sri Lanka the first time since 2007 or 6 or whatever it is. Because, so I do not want to face this man. 2 weeks.
Karuna Ratne is now a Yorkshireman. So,
on,
Sri Lanka.
Yeah. So I don't want to be cursing and swearing in a bad attitude, especially with this man, because this man deserves a lot of respect. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. So James, thank you for joining us as always, and we will see you 2 weeks before the New Zealand Test match to see if England have picked their side and you agree or disagree.
Pleasure, Lucas, as always.
And to our YouTube followers, please follow James Butler, the Cricket Badger, on Twitter, and me 3 Point Spanish
_Badger at cricket _Badger.
At cricket _ Badger.
Just so it's rammed in.
Okay. So he'll give you all advice. His opinions are very good. My opinions not so much. But anyway, 3 Point Spanish King. No. 3 Point Spanish King is the answer. And James, continue to go.
If it is unfollow it.
Oh well, unfollow my 1K followers. Yeah, very, very, very good, James. As you said, you go to these cricket games now that you can go because of COVID. I'm surprised you haven't been hit yet, James, with all the slander you get. So good. Keep it that way, James. Don't say anything too much.
I was walking around Headingley yesterday. I did see a sniper on the top of the stand, but I just ducked behind the colony and he didn't get me. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, on that note, thank you guys for coming and watching our channel. Thank you, James, and we'll see you next time. See you later.